live. Get some music. It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's Norm Ordez.
Well, good morning, know-it-alls. That's right. This is Norm, and I have with me ESPN's Jerry Crasnick. Jerry, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, Norm. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's wet and windy over here in Oregon, so I don't know what the weather is like where you're at. Hopefully it's a little bit better.
Not really. It's not wet, but it's cold.
So ESPN, Jerry covers baseball for ESPN.com. He is also author of the book License to Deal, A Season on the Run with a Maverick Baseball Agent. What persuaded you to write a book?
Well, Norm, I was always sort of interested, have this bizarre fascination with the agent world. I think it's a sort of an interesting subculture in baseball that really a lot of the things run through, player contracts, obviously, but just a lot of things. And I decided to follow a smaller agent named Matt Crasnick, who at the time had Dontrell Willis and was really just kind of getting started. He was more of a Silicon Valley guy, really didn't have any baseball connections. And so I followed him for a year and a half through a card show and a recruiting trip and the draft and a bunch of, sort of landmark events in the year of an agent. And just wrote about what it's like to be a smaller agent and having to worry about dealing, obviously, helping your clients and negotiating deals. But it can be kind of a predatory business. You get players stolen, and it's sort of a vicious business. So it was a fun experience, and I think it got some good reception among people in the baseball community as being sort of an eye-opener into what agents have to deal with in the course of doing their job.
Right. And so what is the best part about your job? What do you think is the best part about your job?
Well, I've never really been an office person, so, to actually be able to go to a ballpark and sit in the press box and go down into a clubhouse. I mean, I enjoy the sort of interaction with managers and players and finding out maybe what goes on a little bit more behind the scenes than what you see on television maybe in watching a game. And then I've always enjoyed the actual writing part of it, sitting down, and sometimes it can be excruciating, but I've always enjoyed that part. I think some of the newer things with the business, like, chats and tweeting and that sort of thing, it takes a little getting used to. There's a lot more going on, and certainly in terms of player acquisitions, with the off season, it's a lot more hectic than it used to be.
Right. So, you cover all of Major League Baseball, correct?
Yes.
And so, give us three players. Not necessarily rookies. Maybe they're still in maybe AAA, AA. Three players who will be most likely called up this year who would make an impact.
Three players who get called up from the minors this year?
Absolutely. Give us three players to look out for. We know about the Billy Hamiltons. We know about the Byron Buxtons.
Sure. Well, I think, I look at Arizona as a kid, Archie Bradley, who I think is going to be a big name to watch. He's a power pitcher who was a kid who was high up in the system, a high pick, who has a ton of talent, who I think, you're going to see at some point. I would think he's going to have some influence on that team. Off the top of my head, let's see, I'm thinking Kansas City has a pitcher named Kyle Zimmer, I know, who they like, who they expect to be up at some point. They have some veteran pitchers who they, are sort of relying on right now, and I think they'll, probably bring him into the fold at some point, maybe in the second half, in hopes that he can have an influence on them, sort of like Michael Walker did with St. Louis last year when he came up at the end of the season. So that's another one. And then let's see, I'm looking at the list of teams. I would think, well, Andrew Heaney is the young pitcher from, I believe he's from Oklahoma State, left-handed pitcher that the Marlins really like, and he might have an influence along the lines of what Jose Fernandez had last year. Not probably to that extent, but I think he's a young kid that you're going to see who could have an impact. And Houston also has a bunch of kids, George Springer, Jonathan Singleton, Carlos Correa is a terrific young shortstop. He's probably a little bit farther away, but they have an influx of young players that are certainly going to have a pretty profound influence very quickly.
Houston's minor league system is loaded. Is it safe to say that, do you think Houston, most of their minor league system is one of the top 5?
Yeah, I mean, they've benefited from obviously having 3 straight years of 100-plus losses.
Right.
And, you know, they've done guys like Mark Appel and this Correa, who's terrific. You know, he sort of models his game after Derek Jeter. They're a team that's loaded. Delano DeShields, the son, plays for them. He's a really fast kid who steals a lot of bases. Mark Appel, obviously, you know, a really talented young pitcher. They have a kid named Mike Fultonevich, who's a really good pitcher. So I think when you look at all of the systems, they probably have the most high-end talent.
Right. So now you covered, when you were with the Reds, covering the Reds, you covered the Pete Rose deal in the suspension. Is it time to allow Pete into the Hall of Fame?
Well, I would like to see the writers at least get an opportunity to vote. You know, what they did was they changed the rules, and they said anybody who's on the ineligible list can't be voted on by the writers. Well, Pete Rose happened to be, you know, just placed on the ineligible list. So they kind of enacted this rule, and I don't want to say rigged it, but they kind of set it up so that the writers couldn't even vote. You know, I would at least like to see him be back on the ballot just to give the writers an opportunity. And maybe when Bud Selig leaves, if he does leave, as he's supposed to a year from now, and his successor comes on board, maybe he might be a little bit more open-minded about giving Pete another crack.
Speaking of Bud, who do you think would be a good successor for him?
Well, you know, there are a lot of people who think that when it comes down to crunch time that he's probably not going anywhere. I think at some point he's going to have to. Look, there are people within baseball circles like Rob Manfred, Bob Bowman, Tim Brosnan, some of these guys that might not be household names are certainly familiar with the ins and outs of baseball. They have a lot of connections in the game. They have good relationships with the owners. So those are certainly a lot of the people who spring to mind. Another name that I've heard bandied around was Andy McPhail, you know, who has obviously a former executive with the Twins and the Cubs, has a great demeanor, great reputation with players and owners. You know, I think he might be a little bit more of a public face, but this is really sort of one of the, I don't know if I'd say problems, but one of the issues that arisen is there really is no ready-made successor for Bud Selig like David Stern had or Paul Tagliabue had. So this is one of the concerns, I think, is that they don't want Bud to leave because there's really no one in line to replace him.
What about Joe Torre?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Torre is a great public face. I just don't know that he would. It's a tough job. You know, there's a lot of consensus building, a lot of calling owners. I mean, I think Joe Torre can do whatever he wants, but I don't know that he would be the guy to do a lot of the politicking and the phone calling and the arm twisting that Bud Selig does. You know, Bud Selig actually, publicly, maybe people might not be that crazy about him, but really when you look at a lot of the positive changes in the game and revenue growth and a lot of things they've done, he's had a pretty amazing tenure, and so you have somebody who's willing to really do a lot of behind-the-scenes work, I think, and I just don't know if that's Joe Torre's strength,
right?
Personally.
So let's do a little segment called Over and Under. I'm going to give you a couple of guys and over and under. So we'll start with Bryce Harper, and we'll go over and under on games played, and I'm going to set it at 140.
I think he'll be over that. You know, I talked to him in spring training. I think he's learned from some of his other issues, you know, with running into walls and things like that. He's still going to be very aggressive, and he's a big kid. But when I spoke to him in spring training, as he pointed out, he said, look, it's not necessarily that I'm reckless running into walls. A lot of it is that I'm still pretty new to playing the outfield. You know, he's still kind of having to learn at the major league level, and he's a very smart kid. He really embraces instruction. He really wants to be out there. He's not quite Yasiel Puig, where, you know, he doesn't listen to people. I don't think he does these things intentionally. So I think he's going to be able to stay on the field for more than that. I do.
All right, so let's go Houston Astros over and under 63 wins.
Say 63?
63.
You know, I think they'll be a little bit over that. Not much over it. I would get them under 100 losses. They certainly, in their first series against the Yankees, showed some spunk. You know, they got Scott Feldman as a quality starter. They have improved their bullpen some with guys like Albers and Qualls, so they won't be blowing as many leads late. Dexter Fowler, you look at Dexter Fowler and Altuve and some of the guys they have. I mean, I think they're slowly improving, probably not quickly enough for Houston fans, but I could see them getting up to, 60, maybe slightly above that, although when you look at last year, maybe it is ambitious. But, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt to say that the young kids come up, give them an injection of enthusiasm, and they get slightly above that. Yeah,
definitely improving, though. They're definitely improving. And that's a tough division, man. Everybody in that division's improved. Even the Angels, they're, Pujols and Hamilton look like they're having a hard time catching up with the fastball right now, but season's still young. So, Dodgers have an interesting roster, and it's quite possible, safe to say, that it's possibly the best roster in Major League Baseball. Do they make it to the World Series this year?
Well, look, I think they're going to make the playoffs, and anytime teams get to the playoffs, then they have a good chance. That they have as much of a chance as anybody. It is kind of a crapshoot. I personally, in our preseason picks, went with St. Louis. I just like sort of the continuity of what they have there. I like the depth in the system. I just like a lot of things about the way they do their business, and I do think the Dodgers already appear to be having this clubhouse turmoil. One day it's Matt Kemp being mad that he's not in the lineup, and then the next day it's Puig showing up late, and they seem to have an awful lot of drama. Now in the postseason, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be their undoing, but I'm going to go with more of the homegrown team and go with St. Louis, and I think Washington certainly could be there as well.
Yep.
But like I said, it's really a crapshoot to say. I do think the Dodgers will get to the postseason. Right now, it's almost impossible to say, hey, this team or that team's going to get to the World Series.
Right. That was my thing at the beginning of the year. I definitely think the Dodgers have what it takes to get there and win it all, but they have clubhouse issues, and they definitely need to address it. And you know what? We're 5 games into the season, so who knows? So the final over and under will go with big man Prince Fielder down in Texas. He's out of Miguel Cabrera's shadow now. Over and under 45 home runs for Prince Fielder this season.
Did you say 45 home runs?
45.
4-5.
4-5.
Yeah, I'd say under on that one. Prince Fielder's certainly going to benefit from going to a much more hitter-friendly ballpark in Texas. But, that's a pretty high figure, and I could see him certainly getting well over 30 and maybe getting up close to 40. I probably wouldn't be comfortable saying over 45, so I'll take the under on that one.
Okay. And what does Billy Hamilton do for the Reds this season?
Well, right now he's struggling, and I've had people say that they think he could wind up, more likely to wind up back in the minors probably than having a 330 or a 340 on base percentage. I think that's probably a little pessimistic, but I just think they put him in a tough spot, asking him to be a leadoff hitter on a team that really expects to contend, while playing center field, a position that he's still fairly new at.
Right.
So, in terms of numbers, I think he's going to struggle some if he can get up to. But he is a kid, though, who has a reputation and a history for getting better as seasons go on. He's a tough-minded kid. He has a nice support system there in Cincinnati. So, I could see him being a kid who hits 230, 240, or whatever, and it gets an on-base percentage anywhere close to 300. He can still be a threat. But,
right.
He needs to improve at the big league level. And as we've seen with a guy like, say, D. Gordon with the Dodgers, it's hard to be a little guy who's not that strong yet and go up against those pitchers day in and day out to try to use your speed. So I wish him all the best because he's a great kid, but I think he is going to have his share of struggles. Right.
So with me is Jerry Crasnick from ESPN.com. Jerry, we thank you for coming on today, and we'd love to chat with you again sometime soon.
Hey, thanks, Norm. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. So once again, ESPN.com, Jerry Crasnick on the show. And, man, he's got the Cardinals. Brian, what do you think about that?
Interesting pick.
I was reading, there's a bunch of guys that are picking the Cardinals again this year.
A lot of people are liking the Dodgers, I think you mentioned.
A lot of people are liking the Dodgers. A lot of people are liking the Nationals.
Cardinals might be a sleeper.
They might be. So I'd like to thank a couple of people, our sponsors. So first off, MDM Designs, who does our shirts. Also, Mitch with basebypros.com. And then Proper Cuts Barbershop over on Baker. Go tell Carlos that Norm sent you in there. And then go over to highway30musicfest.com. Music Fest in Filer, Idaho, that we'll be going to, that we're help sponsor. We're a gold sponsor on that. So Gordy helped us out with that. And then baseballism.com with the shirt. They are giving us 15% off by using 9 innings. So the number 9 inning, when you buy something from them, type that code in, get 15% off. And then finally, baseballdudes.com with Chris Gazelle. That's the hat I am wearing. And once again, Brian over there running the boards. Thank you. And we'll be back about 9 o'clock with another show.